What's up everybody, Kip here with Omnia Fishing. Today we have a pretty exciting rod bending for you, in my opinion. It's a new family of rods from Daiwa, one that we've been anticipating for a long time. They finally showed up and we're pretty stoked about it. This is going to be a minnow shaking specific family of rods. No, it's not for everybody. Our demographic is very much split in that debate. We've got some people that are all for forward-facing sonar, and definitely some people that are against it. So if forward-facing sonar isn't your thing, sorry, we're going to talk about it, but we'll get back to some more conventional stuff in the future. This is the Daiwa Power Scope line of rods. Not often have we seen a forward-facing sonar family of rods. A lot you'll find in like the X Brides, you'll get a forward-facing sonar rod in the family. This is a completely new family dedicated to forward-facing sonar. So the first one we're going to talk about, we're going to go in order of length. So they've got from 6'4" to 7 foot. They've got 4 spinning rods, 4 spinning models, 2 casting models. We are missing one of the casting models, but we want to talk about these. So we will get that one in, but right now we've just got the 6. The first one we're going to start with is a 6'4" light. It's rated from 1/32 to 1/4 of an ounce, 2 to 6 pound test. And they're calling it a regular action. Now that's where this family of rods differs from other American forward-facing sonar rods. A lot of the other rods in this realm are extra fast. They've got, or even extra fast, usually a solid tip, something that hits backbone really quick. In the Japanese industry, you'll see a lot of regular actions. And regular is something that's going to bend further into the blank, so it's not necessarily about imparting the action. About landing fish, and you see a lot of, you're going to see a lot of regular actions in these Power Scope rods. So this is a 6'4" light regular, and it came in at 2.9 ounces. Very light, as it should be. It's a tiny rod, 6'4", and this is going to be for your lighter minnows, right? 3, 4, maybe 5-inch minnows with a lighter head. But cool rod. We've got 3 other spinning rods we'll talk about, and then we'll get to a casting rod. But let's start with this one, 6'4" light regular Daiwa Power Scope. All right, on the wall with that 6'4" light regular Power Scope rod from Daiwa, and imparting a little bit of action here. It has a fast enough tip, I'd say, but when you really load it up, that's when you see that regular action. It's bending pretty consistently throughout the rod. One thing I didn't note or didn't mention right away in that intro, these have very small guides. They're almost micro guides, I would say. You got your stripper guide, a couple more, and then after that, they're tiny. I do own one of these rods already, and I'm using 8-pound braid to 8-pound leader, and haven't had any issues. I think if you went up to 15-pound braid, maybe even 12-pound leader, it's not a heavy line by any means, but I think you might run into some issues with your connection not getting through these guides. If you're running straight braid or straight fluorocarbon, you won't have any issues, but a connection knot with heavier line might cause some hang-ups with this guide train. But if you're using an FG knot, you might be able to get away with a little bit heavier line, but that 8-pound braid to 8-pound leader is kind of my comfort zone with this guide train. Outside of that, these feel incredibly light in hand. I imagine they're fairly sensitive as well. They're coming in at $200, so not breaking the bank for a minnow shaking rod if you want a specific one. But this 6'4" light, I was a little concerned that it was going to be a noodle. It's definitely not. You do have a little bit of backbone. So again, for your 3, 4, maybe 5-inch minnows with a jig head, this is going to be awesome. So good start for these Power Scope rods. Been impressed so far. Again, this was the 6'4" light regular action. All right, moving on to rod number 2. This is actually the rod that I picked up. This is the 6'5" medium light Power Scope. This is actually a fast action, or as they call it, a fast action. I've used it already, and I feel like I might disagree with that, but this one came in at 3 ounces flat. Again, really light, just an inch longer than that light we talked about, and only 1/10 of an ounce heavier. The lure rating on this guy is 1/16 of an ounce to 3/8 of an ounce. 4 to 8 pound test, 6 to 10 pound braid. I would say if you were just going to get one of these rods to handle all of your forward facing sonar stuff, this would probably be the one that I would go for, and actually did go for. They call it their mid-strolling Power Plus. power part I'm not so sure about. It's still pretty soft, but I think this is probably your most versatile rod in the lineup. I'm by no means a live scope expert, but I did put one on the boat this year and wanted a rod dedicated to that technique. So excited to get this one out on the water. Again, this is the 6.5 medium light fast action Daiwa power scope. All right, here we are with rod number 2, the 6.5 medium light fast action power scope, and giving it a little pressure here. To me, this is more of a mod fast than a fast, especially when you give it, especially when you give this rod some power, it's folding over on itself. So I would tend to call this more of a mod fast, regular bend than a fast. And it reminds me a lot of that 6.4 that we talked about, with just a little extra power. So I think it could still handle the 3-inch minnows. The 4 and 5-inch minnows are absolutely its sweet spot. But you can get away with throwing maybe a 6-inch minnow as well. This is your do-all rod in the lineup, and one that I'm super excited about. So again, the 6.5 medium light fast action power scope. All right, next up in the family, we've got a 6.8 light. Right off the bat, I can tell you this feels a lot softer than that 6.4 we talked about earlier. It is a little bit longer. They're calling this one their mid-strolling rod. That's the name of this one. Rating wise, it's 32nd ounce to 1/4 ounce, just like that 6.4, but I'm betting that this will be able to handle a lot less weight than that 6.4. Line rating, 2 to 6 pound. I don't even give you a braid line rating on this one, so maybe don't try it. It came in at 2.8 ounces. This is lighter than that 6.4. It's 4 inches longer, but it is a little bit lighter weight. Balances with a 2500 on here, way back in the handle. It's gonna balance out really nice. That's ridiculously lightweight for a 6.8 rod. I'm betting this is gonna be pretty spongy on the wall, but let's check it out here. The 6.8 light regular action Daiwa power scope. Back on the wall with the 6.8 light regular power scope from Daiwa, and barely moving my wrist at all. This thing's soft. This is kind of what I anticipated the 6.4 light to feel like. That 6.4 is kind of a sneaky one. Definitely, without even giving this a full bend, that 6.4 has way more backbone and is actually pretty versatile. This one is for the lightest stuff in your boat. The 1/96 ounce jig heads have been pretty popular. Gamakatsu's got one. I think Owner might have came out with one well in the Range Roller. Could be wrong there. But this is the rod specifically for those jig heads. I mean, you could trout fish with this rod. You could pan fish with this rod. It is that light. Not the most versatile in the lineup, but when you need to throw the lightest jig head you have in your box, this is one you'd want to reach for. So if you've got several scoping rods and need one for the light stuff, this is one I'd definitely check out. It is ridiculously light, super soft tip, and it does feel great. Still got those little guides on it, but if you're running super light line like this rod recommends, those guides aren't an issue. So a cool rod here, definitely a unique one in this lineup, the 6.8 light regular action power scope. All right, last spinning rod for today. This is their big boy. This is a 6.8 medium heavy. I believe it's still a regular action. Yep, 6.8 medium heavy regular action. Lure rating on it's going to be an 1/8 ounce to 3/4 ounce. 8 to 20 pound test, 8 to 15 pound braid. This one's coming in at 3.4 ounces. So for a medium heavy, actually fairly light still. And this is called their Power Spin, aptly named. This thing feels super stout without actually bending it. But with those 6, 7, 8-inch minnows, especially the Sakamata shads that have a bunch of weight to them, this is the type of rod you need. So a good addition to the lineup in my opinion. But let's see how it bends. The 6.8 medium heavy regular action power scope. On the wall here with that 6.8 medium heavy regular power scope and giving it some pressure, it's tough to tell without giving it a ton of power, but this feels a little bit more like a fast action to me. I mean, when you load it up, it does bend a little bit further into the blank, but I'd still call it a fast, maybe a mod fast, but it's got some serious power. For those bigger minnows, you're throwing maybe the Gamakatsu Horizon Head LG, that bigger hook. This is the type of rod you want, but I don't think this is limited to just scoping. This would be a badass dock skipping rod with the Senko. If you like a shorter tube rod for some reason, this would be killer. If you like a shorter jig worm rod, which is something we do up here a ton, this has the backbone to do it. Maybe you're a guy that's not comfortable with casting gear yet. This has enough power to handle a lot of the casting stuff. But I do think those bigger minnows, as it was designed for, is where this is gonna shine. One thing I haven't talked about yet, I usually do, the grip on this rod, big cork foregrip, big fan of that. All my fingers are in front of the reel seat comfortably. If you are a split finger guy or just a pinky below the reel, might not be the most comfortable, but for me, this is right up my alley. All these rods have had a hook keeper at the bottom section of the butt section of the rod. Again, I'm a fan of that, especially on spinning stuff. If you have it up here, it's the line slapping off the blank, you can get hung up there pretty easy. So these check a lot of boxes for me in just a spinning rod in general, but cool to see that they're coming out with a family specifically for forward-facing sonar. I'm a big fan of these so far. Again, this was the 6/8 medium heavy regular action power scope. Okay, last rod for the day. We've actually got a casting rod. You think forward-facing sonar, a lot of the times it's a spinning rod. Daiwa came out with 2 casting rods in this lineup. We're missing one. They've got a 6/8 medium heavy jerkbait rod, which I'm really interested to see. You know, some of the elite guys like a little bit stiffer jerkbait rod. That on paper, that seems to be what it is. But the one that we do have is a 7-foot heavy fast action. This one is rated from 1/8 of an ounce to 1.5 ounces. That's a pretty wide lure rating there. And 12 to 25 pound fluoro, max 40 pound braid. I think you maybe get away with a little heavier braid on this if you wanted to, but it does still have those tiny guides. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see those, but pretty small guides. So I would recommend going with straight fluorocarbon or straight braid on this rod. Even with an FG, like 30 pound braid and 17 pound fluoro, I think you're gonna get hung up a little bit on these guides, which isn't an issue. A lot of straight fluorocarbon guys out there, a lot of straight braid guys out there, and I think this is still an awesome rod at 200 bucks. Came in at 4.2 ounces for 7-foot heavy. It's kind of on par with what you see. So not mind blowing in the weight department, but no slouch either. It feels great in hand. With this little baits on it, feels awesome too. It's got the air sensor reel seat, which I've always been a big fan of. And they're calling this their close quarter combat rod, which makes sense. Short, 7-foot, heavy powered rod. It feels super stiff, so I'm excited to see what we see on the wall here. But again, 7-foot heavy, fast action power scope. All right, last bend for the day. 7-foot heavy, fast action Daiwa power scope. And just giving it a little pressure. That tip section looks pretty fast to me. Loading it up more, I could see you calling this an extra fast. It's got a ton of backbone, and the tip section is fairly light. I understand why they're calling it a fast for sure, but from my angle, if they called it an extra fast, I wouldn't bat an eye. This thing has a ton of power. I know when you think of scoping, you think spinning rods. We have seen some of the professionals scoping with a jig or a mag draft or bigger presentations. I think that's what they were going for here with this rod. And I think it's absolutely serviceable in that scenario. I don't exactly know what separates this 7-foot heavy forward-facing sonar rod from a 7-foot heavy conventional rod, but nonetheless a cool rod here. Definitely not pigeonholed into forward-facing sonar. If you want a sweet jig rod, a shorter frog rod, no issues with this rod whatsoever. It is super fast. It does have tiny guides on it, but if you're running straight fluorocarbon, straight braid, definitely no issues. And a cool rod. I'm excited to bend that 6/8 medium heavy jerkbait rod. When we get that in, maybe we'll do another jerkbait rod comparison on the wall here. So if you want to see that, leave some other jerkbait rods in the comments. We'll take those into consideration and put them against that power scope. But that's it for this one. 7-foot heavy fast action Daiwa power scope. That is going to wrap it up for this week's rod bend. Final closing thoughts on the Daiwa power scope line. I think they're awesome for 200 bucks. You don't see a lot of companies servicing specifically the forward-facing sonar community in the rod game. I think Daiwa did a good job with that. If you were just going to get one of these rods, I would go with that 6.5 medium light fast action. I think that can do a little bit of everything. If you were going to get two, That 6.4 light is sneaky for your lighter stuff, and then obviously that 6.8 medium heavy would handle your bigger stuff. That's my opinion on what you should be getting depending on your situation. But overall, a really cool family of rods from Daiwa at a relatively budget friendly price point, right at 200 bucks. So thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate the view. If you like this video, leave a like, leave a comment below. And remember, if you are not already an Omnia Pro member, start saving on your tackle. Get 10% back on all of your purchases at Omnia Fishing, whether it's lures, baits, rods, tackle storage, we've got it all. But with that being said, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll catch you next week back at the rod wall.